The land was called the Devil's Thumbprint, a 100-mile basin of alkali, flat and baked, cracked earth, where the sun hammered the world into a shimmering mirage-like anvil. It was a place that didn't just kill you, it erased you. It cooked the water from your bones, cracked your skin like old leather, and scoured your tracks with a wind that tasted of grit and millennia. To Silas, however, the thumbprint was a book. Every scuff, every overturned pebble, every crushed stalk of greasewood was a word. And for 3 days, he had been reading a very angry, very violent story. He was tracking a man named Corchado, a man who had ridden out of the South with a dozen hardened vaqueros, cut a bloody swathe through the settlements on the Pecos, and taken things: horses, money, and from the last homestead, a girl. Silas wasn't a lawman. Lawmen didn't last long here. They came with warrants and ideals, and the thumbprint baked them out, leaving them dead in their saddles. Silas was a specialist, a finder. He was hired by men who had lost things they couldn't afford to lose. In this case, a cattle baron named McCoy had lost his niece, and he'd paid Silas a sum that could buy a small town to bring her back. Silas knelt, his gloved hand hovering over the ground. The tracks of Corchado's party were easy to follow, a dozen shod horses moving fast. But that wasn't what he was looking at. He was looking at a different track, one that had split off from the main group. It was small, barefoot, and digging in at the toe. A runner. He'd seen this before. A captive making a desperate, foolish break. Corchado was cruel, but he wasn't stupid. He wouldn't waste men tracking a single shoeless girl in the middle of the thumbprint. He'd let the sun do his work for him. Silas, however, was not Corchado. This changed the math. His mission had been to follow, to wait, to find an opportunity to strike Corchado's camp at night and retrieve the girl. Now the girl was loose, a tiny, dying ember in a vast, cold fireplace. He examined the print. A woman, light, but she was faltering. The steps were uneven, the stride shortening. She was walking in a wide, hopeless circle, the classic pattern of the lost. Delirium was setting in. He guessed she had 6 hours, maybe less. He was crouched, one knee in the dust, his hat pulled low, his gaze fixed on the heartbreaking, solitary trail. He was a man of cold, hard logic, and the logic was grim. She was already dead. His job was to find Corchado. But McCoy had paid for the girl, not for a report of her death. He stood, his joints cracking. He would follow, and he would find her, and he would do what he could. It was the job. He settled his hat, his eyes scanning the shimmering heat waves. He took one step, following the small, desperate track, and then he heard it, a sound like dry leaves skittering. He stopped, his hand dropping to the worn wooden grip of his Colt. He didn't turn. He listened. "Please!" The voice was not a voice. It was the sound of a throat cracked open, the last bit of moisture pushed out into the air. He turned, slowly, and there she was, the author of the tracks. She was walking toward him, a ghost of a thing, her tattered white dress glowing in the relentless sun. She was 20 yards away, and it was a miracle she was still standing. Her hair, a dark matted tangle, was caked with dust. Her dress, a simple cotton shift, was ripped to rags, one shoulder bare and already blistering a violent red. Her feet, which he had only known as tracks, were a bloody, pulpy mess. But it was her eyes that stopped him. They were wide, fixed on him, but they weren't seeing a man. They were seeing a shape, a hope, A final desperate hallucination before the end. This was the girl from the picture. This was Lena. She took one more step, her knee locked, and then the string was cut. She crumpled, not falling, but folding in on herself, a small white pile of rags and despair. Silas was moving before she hit the ground, covering the distance in 10 long ground-eating strides. He holstered his pistol as he ran, pulling his canteen from his saddle. He skidded to his knees beside her, his movements economical, practiced. He was not a gentle man. The desert had burned all the softness out of him, but he was efficient. He grabbed her by the shoulder and turned her over. Her skin was hot, dry as paper. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. He uncapped the canteen and lifted her head, pouring a small, precious stream of water onto her mouth. She coughed, a dry, racking sound. Her eyes, unfocused, tried to find him. "Easy," he said. His voice was a low rasp, gravel in a dry creek bed. "Just a little." "You'll make yourself sick." She clawed at his wrist, her fingers surprisingly strong, a primal, animalistic grip. She was trying to pull the canteen closer. He let her have a little more, then firmly pulled it away. "That's enough. For now." He sat back on his heels, letting her rest her head in his lap. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the marks of corchado. A dark, ugly bruise, the shape of a man's hand, was stark on her upper arm. Rope burns chafed her wrists. He looked back the way he'd come. The tracks of Corchado's gang were already being softened by the wind. They were miles away by now, moving toward the border. He looked down at the girl. She was a liability, a piece of fragile, dying baggage. Getting her out of the thumbprint would cost him days. It would cost him his water. It would cost him the trail. She moaned, her eyes fluttering. He's gone, Silas said. "They're gone. They'll come back." "No," Silas said, with a certainty he didn't entirely feel. "They think you're dead. They think the sun has you. They're right." He capped the canteen. He had a choice. He could leave her his water and a pistol, a kindness, a way for her to end it before the buzzards came. He could ride on, find Corchado, and avenge her. It's what most men would do. It's what the job, by a certain cold logic, demanded. Or he could honor the other part of the job, the part that paid him. He tore a strip of clean cloth from his saddlebag. He soaked it with a few drops of precious water and began to wipe the caked dust and dried blood from her face. Her eyes, clear now, watched him. They were terrified, but the delirium was fading. She was seeing him, a man, a stranger. Who are you?" she whispered. "Name's Silas," he said, his hand surprisingly gentle as he cleaned a cut on her temple. "Your uncle sent me." He saw the flicker of recognition, and then the last of her strength gave way. Her eyes rolled back, and she went limp in his arms, the mercy of unconsciousness finally taking her. Silas looked up at the sky, a vast, white-hot, merciless thing. "Damn," he whispered. He'd just traded a simple hunt for a desperate rescue, and the desert was a cruel place for heroes. Night in the thumbprint was as cold as the day was hot. Silas had found a shallow, rocky overhang, less a cave than a dip in the earth, that offered some protection from the wind. He'd built a small, smokeless fire from dried mesquite roots, a tiny island of warmth in the ocean of freezing dark. Lena was wrapped in his bedroll, her body still occasionally shaken by tremors. He had cleaned and bandaged her feet as best he could, using scraps of her own ruined dress and salve from his saddlebag. They were bad. She wouldn't be walking for a week. He sat on the other side of the fire, his rifle across his knees, sipping bitter coffee. He was on half rations of water. She was on half rations. His horse, a tough bay gelding named Judas, was on half rations. This was a bad equation. "I didn't think he'd come," she said, her voice quiet. Silas looked at her. She was awake, her eyes fixed on the flames. "Your uncle," he said. "He's a stubborn man. He and my father, they didn't speak," she murmured. "After my mother died, he blamed my pa, said he was too soft for this land." "He wasn't wrong," Silas said, the words flat, not cruel, just true. Lena flinched but didn't argue. "Corchado, he came at dawn. My father, he went out to talk to him. He thought he could reason with him. Corchado shot him in the throat." She was silent for a long time, her face illuminated by the fire. She wasn't crying. The thumbprint had already taken her tears. "They ransacked the house," she continued, her voice a monotone. "They took the horses. They took me. Corchado said I'd fetch a good price in Sonora. I was with them for 2 days. The first night, She stopped, her hand unconsciously touching the bruise on her arm. "The second night, I waited until the guard was asleep. I took a knife. I cut my horse free and I rode. They followed," Silas stated. "Not at first, but my horse, it stepped in a prairie dog hole, snapped its leg. I heard it scream. She closed her eyes. I had to, with the knife. Then I ran. I just ran until I saw you." Silas nodded, drinking his coffee. He'd read the story in the tracks. The lone horse, the fall, the panicked barefoot prints leading away. "You're lucky," he said, her head snapped up, her eyes blazing. "Lucky? You're alive," he said. "That's luck. The rest is just arithmetic. Corchado is 2 days ahead. He thinks you're dead, but he'll get to the border and he won't have you. He'll wonder. His men will talk. They'll remember your horse." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying he's not the only one who can read a track," Silas said. "He's got trackers of his own. Good ones, Apaches most like. When he realizes he's lost property, he'll send one back. Not to find you, to find who found you." The fear returned to her face, a cold, pale mask. "He's coming? For us?" "Someone is," Silas said. He tossed the dregs of his coffee into the fire. It hissed and the flames dipped. "We move at first light. We're not just running to safety, we're running from him." He checked the action on his rifle. "You can ride." "I'll walk. We'll be slow. That means we have to be smart." He looked at her, his eyes cold and hard as the stones around them. "There's no more crying. There's no more fainting. There's only the trail. You do exactly what I say when I say it. You understand me?" Lena looked at the man who had saved her. He was not a hero from a storybook. He was a piece of the desert himself, hard, unforgiving, and brutally practical. He was, she realized, the only thing in this God-forsaken land that could keep her alive. She nodded once. "I understand." For 2 days, they moved. It was a slow, agonizing crawl. Silas put Lena on Judas, her bandaged feet hanging limp. He walked beside the horse, his gaze never lifting from the ground. He was no longer just a tracker. He was an eraser. He led them across shelves of bare rock where their tracks would leave no impression. He walked them backward, brushing their trail with a handful of sage, a classic, simple trick that a novice would fall for, but which would at least slow down a master. He moved through a herd of antelope, their thousands of hooves churning the earth and obliterating the simple trail of a single horse and a single man. He was a ghost, and he was trying to teach her to be one too. "Don't break the skyline," he'd hiss when she'd ride to the top of a ridge. "Stay in the low ground, always. Water disciplines all. They'll check the springs. We won't go near them." He pushed himself and her to the limit. He rationed the water with a miser's hand. Each sip was a torment. Lena's lips cracked open again. Silas's own skin felt tight, his eyes burning in their sockets. He walked and walked, the steady plod of his boots, the clip-clop of the horse, the creak of the leather. It was their whole world. On the evening of the second day, he saw the buzzard, a single black speck, circling. But it wasn't circling them, it was to the south, where they had been a day ago. "Get down," he whispered. He pulled Lena from the saddle, dragging her behind a cluster of cholla cactus. He pushed Judas to the ground, the horse groaning in protest. "What is it?" Lena breathed, her eyes wide. "He's here," Silas said. He pulled his spyglass from his saddlebag. He crawled to the top of the small rise and trained the glass on the circling buzzard. For 10 minutes, he watched. The buzzard was interested in something Silas had left. The day before, he had gut-shot a jackrabbit. He hadn't taken it. He'd left it, a deliberate bloody offering, in the middle of a dry wash. A test, and now the test had been sprung. He saw him, a single rider on a pinto horse. He was almost naked, wearing only a breech clout and moccasins. He was sitting on his horse, watching the buzzard. Then he dismounted, knelt, and examined the rabbit. He wasn't Corchado. This was worse. This was his Apache tracker, the man who wouldn't be fooled by brush or antelope or backward steps. The man would read the sign. He would see the rabbit was shot, not trapped. He would know someone was out here, and he would know they were armed. "He's found our trail," Silas said, sliding back down. His face was grim. "How? You were so careful." "You can't erase a shadow," Silas said. "He knows. He's a day behind us, but he's on a fresh horse. We're on a tired one. He'll catch us by tomorrow." "So we run?" "No," Silas said. "We can't outrun him." He looked around, his eyes calculating the terrain, the broken land, the rocky ground. "We're done running. Now we hunt." He pulled his rifle from its scabbard. "We find a place." We let him come to us. He looked at Lena. The terror was back in her eyes, but underneath it, something hard was forming. The desert was baking her too. "You're going to have to be the bait," he said. The spot he chose was a narrow pass between two high stone-walled mesas. It was a natural bottleneck, the only way through for 10 miles. "He'll come this way," Silas said. "It's the most direct route." He found a small cleft in the rock, 100 feet up the canyon wall, barely big enough for one man. It had a perfect field of fire over the canyon floor. "I'll be up there," he said to Lena. He handed her the reins to Judas. "You're going to walk the horse right down the middle of the canyon, slowly, like you're tired, like you're alone." He'll shoot me," she whispered, her hands trembling. "No," Silas said, his voice surprisingly soft as he checked his rifle. "He's a tracker. His job isn't to kill you. His job is to catch you. He'll want you alive, to take back to Corchado. He'll try to get close. He'll get off his horse. He'll come at you on foot. He'll think you're easy." He put his hand on her shoulder. "You just keep walking. Don't look up, don't look around. Just walk. I'll handle the rest. And if you miss, I won't miss," he said. He gave her a canteen with the last of their water. Then he was gone, scrambling up the rock face like a lizard, disappearing into the shadows. Lena was alone. She waited an hour as he'd instructed, an hour of the loudest silence she had ever known. Then she took a breath. She tugged the reins, and Judas, weary and resigned, began to walk. She moved down the center of the canyon. The high red walls seemed to press in on her. Every shadow was a man. Every gust of wind was a whisper. Her bandaged feet ached in the stirrups. She just kept her eyes on the horse's ears, just as Silas had told her. Walk. She was halfway through when Judas's head snapped up, his ears swiveling. He snorted. Lena's heart stopped. She fought the urge to look, just walk. She heard it, the soft, almost silent scuff of a moccasin on stone. It came from her left, from a jumble of boulders. He was there. She forced herself to keep moving, her body rigid with terror. She could feel his eyes on her. She heard another scuff. Closer. He was paralleling her, hidden in the rocks, getting ahead of her. He was going to step out and grab her, and then the world exploded. The crack of Silas's rifle was a physical blow, echoing off the canyon walls a dozen times, sounding like a cannon. Lena screamed and fell from the saddle as Judas reared. From the rocks to her left, she saw the man, the Apache tracker, lurch out from his cover, his hand grabbing his chest. He had a knife in his other hand. He looked up, not at her, but at the canyon wall, his face a mask of surprise. He took one more step, and then he fell, face first into the dust. He didn't move. Silence. The echoes died. Lena was sobbing in the dirt. She heard a scrape of boots on rock. Silas was sliding down the cliff face. He landed in the canyon, his rifle in his hand. He was no longer looking at the pass. He was looking back the way they'd come. "What is it?" she cried, scrambling to her feet. "You got him. He's dead." "That was too easy," Silas said, his voice a low, urgent growl. He was reloading his rifle. He was a master. He wouldn't have been that careless. He stopped. His eyes narrowed. "He wasn't hunting us, you damn fool," he whispered to himself. "He was hurting us." "Silas, you're scaring me." "Get on the horse," he snapped. "What?" "Get on the horse." He grabbed her, throwing her into the saddle. He wasn't alone. And as if his words had summoned them, they appeared. At the far end of the canyon, the end they were walking toward, 4 riders appeared, blocking the exit. And at the other end, the one they'd just come from, 3 more. They were trapped. Corchado himself, a big man on a black horse, rode into the pass. He wasn't even holding a gun. He was smiling. The Apache tracker had been the bait. "The little bird," Corchado called out, his voice echoing. "She found a hawk." But the snake always waits. He looked at Silas, who now stood beside Lena's horse, his rifle held loosely at his side. "You, the finder, you cost me a good man." He nodded at the dead Apache. "But you found my property for me. I thank you." Silas said nothing. He looked at the 7 men. He looked at Lena. The arithmetic was bad. "Give me the girl," Corchado said, "and I'll let you keep your horse. I'll even let you keep your life." Lena was trembling, her hand over her mouth. Silas looked at her. He saw the terror in her eyes. He saw the bruises. He thought of his payment. He thought of his life. He looked back at Corchado. "You're right," Silas called out. "She's property." He reached up, grabbed Lena by the arm, and ripped her from the saddle, throwing her to the ground. She landed hard, crying out in pain and shock. "Take her," Silas said. He let his rifle fall into the dust. "The job's over. I'm just a working man. She's not worth this." Corchado laughed.